Hello, gorgeous people. My name is Anjali Yadav, and welcome to the course of Financial Products for Rural Markets. We are going to talk about various topics in this course, be it financial services, why it needs improvement in the rural areas, and financial inclusion, financial products and services, different schemes introduced by the government for increasing the use of formal sector in the rural areas, and also we will be talking about microfinancing. It will be a great experience about learning this course, and I will also be sharing my experiences of rural areas, how I have spent my time over there and what I have observed. So let's get started. So our first chapter name is Idea and Significance of Rural Financial Intersection. So in this chapter, the objective of this chapter is basically that to make you understand the natural demand and supply of rural financial services, to provide an insight into the structure of Indian financial systems, to understand the rural financial framework, to understand the concept of financial inclusion, and at the last, to understand how the financial products and services are being offered to the rural market. So, as we go to the next slide, these are the five topics which we have divided our course in our first chapter into. So firstly, the financial services, and we'll discuss about the needs for why we need to improve this financial services. Then next, rural improvement. What is the improvement needed in the side of rural people who are living? What all things they need to adapt to be using all these financial services. Then we will discuss about rural financial framework, then financial inclusion, and lastly we'll discuss about the various products and services provided in the rural areas. So let's understand the significance of rural financial intersection. So in this chapter, there are basically 4 to 5 topics which will be focusing on. So let's just get the understanding of these definitions of this 4 topics which will be covering. Uh, in India, financial sector is predominantly the banking sector, having commercial banks with amount of majority in total assets of financial system. Uh, Indian government has introduced various reforms for liberalizing, regulating, and enhancing the industry. But then also, financial services are financial services sector comprises of various organizations like insurance companies, commercial banks, non-banking financial companies, pension funds, and mutual funds, and all other smaller financial entities. So, what is rural finance? So, rural finance can be referred to the financial services that are offered and used by the people in rural areas. So, this is rural finance. It's clear with the definition itself. Next, financial intermediation. In basic words, financial intermediation is basically providing the resources to the people to reach to the financial sector, the finance, using the finance. It's basically bridging the gaps between the rural area people to a formal or informal, basically formal financial sector. So this is financial intermediation. Next, we'll see about financial inclusion. Financial inclusion basically focus on the access or ownership to particular financial product and services, like deposits, services, savings, credit, insurance, and money transfer. So these few things are the mainstream financial services providers. Uh, According to me, like what I feel is financial inclusion is, there are many people living in various remote areas, like in of mountains, where it is the food itself reaches very hardly. So sending a, like making the resources available for financial purpose, it is a tough job to be done. So next, we'll see, at the end we'll talk about financial products and services for rural market, and this includes loan or credit, pension, insurance, all this stuff. So let's get started with our first topic, that is financial services needs for improvement. In financial sector in India is diversified and it is undergoing expansion rapidly, with the existing financial services firms and the new entities that are coming and entering the market. So the challenge the challenge which we are facing is that to provide the financial services in rural areas, because agriculture, the activities and the characteristics, as they are dependent on natural resources, so it is very unpredictable what is going to happen in while agriculture is happening. There might be a natural calamity, or there can be pest can eat up your crops, and various other things can occur. So there are multiple risks and vulnerabilities in this sector. So we have actually observed there is a paradigm shift in the rural finance, as the people in rural areas are not limited only up to opening or saving account, or just dealing with basic loan products. The rural client are not limited to just farmers and the uneducated uh, people, like uneducated who only includes generation that could use and adapt technology. Then rural finance is in turn advocated a design that is demand driven, and it is providing efficient and provision for multiple financial services and products through inclusive financial system comprising of sustainable institutes that are serving diversified services in for the rural clients. So this is the basic things why we need to improve the financial services in the rural areas. Next, we will see the role of central bank and financial authorities in financial inclusion. So central bank and financial authorities play a very crucial role in financial inclusion. Like looking after core mandates is that financial stability and price, the central bank and other authorities could boost trust in financial system. This provides a base of financial inclusion. So we can see this link here, this red one. This link is indicated by the red arrow in this diagram. People do not start using the financial services if they don't have the trust on currency or financial institution like banks or cooperatives or credit unions. What central bank can do is it could help in building trust in both the building trust in both the dimensions, and then it can also safeguard the stability and trust in currency, and it can form a sound framework for prudential supervision, and this can build trust in these institutions. Like in rural areas, it's very basic that people don't trust in formal sectors like banks and other formal institutions. So nextly we will see about the nature of rural financial services in the rural areas. So uh, financial services in rural areas is not only restricted in agriculture lending. As we can see in this era, rural people are actually becoming more concerned about other jobs, not only agriculture. And this is we can say this is a positive aspect also, and also a negative, because people are distancing themselves from agriculture, and they are looking for other jobs and other non-agriculture sectors to earn their living. So the credit provision in the rural services, the credit provision helps in smoothing the uneven expenditure and income streams. This actually helps in smoothing the uneven expenditure. There is a lot of risk involved, basically, while providing credit to people in rural areas, and the risk could be of two kinds. One is when the borrower is unable to pay against the loan, and the second is that when the borrower is unwilling to repay. So these are the overall lending activities that entail in rural areas. Firstly is exchange of today's consumption for latter period of consumption. Then next is protection against the default risk. Then acquiring the information about the applicant of loan, screening problem. Then uh, then measure for ensuring that the borrower takes action which can increase the probability of repayment. And lastly, actions for increasing livelihood of the repayment by borrower who are able to do this enforcement problem, this can be known as. So next we will see the demand of rural financial services. So this demand topic is divided into three topics, three sectors. That is the effective demand of rural credit, the paradigm of directed credit provision, and the paradigm of the centralized and agriculture credit policy. So in the effective demand for rural credit, we focus that we can say that many problems relating to the rural financial services has been derived from the misunderstanding of nature of services effective. Like there was a misconception that the farmers and few other rural dwellers require credit for the purpose of agriculture production only, or for this agriculture purpose only. So an effectual demand for loan backed by willingness and payment ability could exist for smoothing variety of situation consumption and income streams that are faced poorly in the rural areas. So many rural dwellers need credit in the form of consumption loan for meeting the cost of living during the months when they have their harvest due next and not for purchasing inputs for raising agriculture productivity. And secondly, another misconception was that the poor farmers are very poor for paying the credit, but there was little demand. Eventually, evidence indicates that the poor household of rural areas are willing and also able uh, to service loan in case they borrow to meet their own perceived need and have been screened as monitored adequately. So we have discussed the effect of demand for rural credit, and secondly, we see the paradigm of directed credit provision. So, as we discussed, the misconception that resulted in agriculture credit policy that agriculture was the only purpose required for the credit. So this was the misconception during the 1960s and the 1970s, which were based on paradigm. So the central government took the observation according to them. Uh, it was a function of central government for deciding that what should farmers do with the credit. They started the central government actually started observing and finding out the questions for why farmers need why the credit, and what should be the credit cost for rural borrowers. They started discussing and planning out things. uh, then who should benefit actually from loans, and what should be the total agriculture credit amount. All these questions were thought about and planned so that a better rural credit services or any services can be provided. It was also the function of central government to provide saving mobilization mechanism in the rural areas. Rural people usually save their earnings day by day. So, and their savings is also in small amounts. So they actually needed the mobilization mechanism to save their small amount or micro amount money. And it central government also had to provide the facilities for lending or on subsidized basis. Uh, Usually facilities of financial services are quite costly. So central government had to lend it on the subsidized basis. Then thirdly, we'll see the paradigm of the centralized and agriculture credit policy. So the the major source for livelihood is agriculture, and main engine for economical government sorry economical growth in the development countries, which indicates that development of production from agriculture is public priority. So paradigm of the centralized and the agriculture credit policy. In this, we focused on various points. So these first one. Then we focused on technological innovation, and more inputs used are indispensable for increase in the production. Then farmers required more financial resource for adopting technology innovations, as farmers are not that illiterate, and they don't have the understanding of technology, so they need a separate resource to teach the technology which has to be. adopted, and mostly farmers are poor. Hence, there exists a gap in the cash resources, and their blocks adopting new technology, and also credit is required for filling the gap. Then agriculture is said to be risky, as the returns in the sector are lesser, and as compared to other economic sectors, the agriculture has the most risk. So these were the few points in which there was decision taken by the centralized government to rectify the agriculture credit policy, and remove the myths that credit is only needed for agriculture purposes. Next, we will see the supply of rural. We will see the supply of rural financial services. So, what problems while supplying the financial services with the people face is that high financial transaction cost for attending and disposed, as well as small household. So there is high transaction cost involved while using these services, and then limited availability of collateral that the farm households could offer, which highlights need for increasing securities for existing loans collateral, or developing appropriate substitute for collateral. And there is a need for providing training adequately to the farmer clients, as well as the staff who provides the financial services. So these were the few unique problems which are faced by while supplying agricultural finance or any other finance services in the rural areas. Nextly, we will in the supply of rural financial services, we have two sectors. One is formal sector, and other is informal sector. Eh, you can say that formal sector is banks and NBFCs, which actually involves a lot of paperwork, and every legality is given attention to give a credit in the formal sector. And in informal sector, the landlords and the friends relatives, they usually don't ask for any paperwork or anything. They just lend on the trust basis. So basically, in rural areas, informal sector uh, is more adapted, because it is easy for people to borrow it from their friends and relatives than facing uh, uh, the paperwork, a lot of paperwork, and then transactional cost is also involved. So it formal sector has tried a lot to get into the rural areas to make their establishment. So, formal sector consists of banks and non-banking financial institutions that provide intermediation services between the depositor and the borrowers. Banks and NBFIs fall under banking law, and they are supervised and regulated, and they're always supervised and regulated. In the past, they typically charged lower rates for interest, which was subsidized by the government. Many a times later, lesser attention was given to the voluntary saving mobilization in the rural areas, because since small farmers were poor, and they were considered having a lower propensity towards saving. In the informal sector, Informal sector is in developing countries compromise of professional money lenders and commission agents, then landlords and friend relatives, those who generally lend money from their own wealth and are not supervised or regulated by the National Monetary Authority. This is the informal sector. Major difference between the two of the suppliers is mechanism used to deal with screening, incentive, and monitor problems with informal sector that usually rely more than formal sector uh, or their close knowledge about their clients in overcoming their problems. Now let's see what is crowdfunding out. Sorry, crowding out. It is a part of informal sector only. Then in this, the paradigm shift in agriculture credit excludes the informal market, like from playing a role due to the two reasons. Firstly, the operators in the informal financial market don't share same commitments as government is in promoting the agriculture production. Secondly, they would be charging exorbitant rate of interest that allegedly the agricultural productions would not find it affordable to pay. In many development countries, you have seen that for many years, government hindered spontaneous development of the informal financial intermediaries through occupation, through the subsidized operations, market space, which informal uh, operators would have exploiting and developing. So this effect is defined as the crowding out effect of the government's agriculture credit policy. Now, as we complete the topic, our first topic, I want I want you guys to I want you guys to have a activity. So in this activity, you have to list out at least 2 points, the differences of agriculture and non-agriculture sector, and secondly, for the formal and informal sector in the supply of rural financial services. I hope this activity will help you understanding this topic more.